For decades, we've been told this one pretty compelling story about what happens inside the minds of expert meditators, a story all about supercharged brainwaves and, this incredible focus. But today, we're going to be detectives. We're going to follow a team of scientists as they get a look inside the meditating brain like never before. So let's just dive right in with a huge question. What if one of the most popular ideas about the neuroscience of meditation, something you've almost definitely heard or read about, is actually just a big misunderstanding of the data? That's the mystery we're going to unravel together. So here it is. This is the old story, the established idea. For years, study after study seemed to show that meditation causes this big spike in high-frequency gamma waves, and everyone thought, that's it. That's the signature of a super-aware, focused mind. It just made so much sense. But as we're about to find out, the real story is way, way more interesting. Okay, so first things first. Our investigation starts by putting this super popular idea right under the microscope. We're going to see what happened when a new study decided to go back and really double-check this whole gamma wave theory. Now, to do this, the researchers didn't mess around. They brought in the best of the best, 12 Buddhist monks, each with, on average, a staggering 15,000 hours of practice. They put them inside this incredible, state-of-the-art MEG scanner, a machine that measures the brain's magnetic fields with insane precision. The mission? To see what was really going on in there. And they didn't just look at meditation in general. They had the monks practice two very different styles. First up was samatha, or focused attention. That's when you really try to sustain your focus on just one thing, like your breath. The other was vipassana, or open monitoring, which is totally different. It's more of a wide-open, non-judgmental awareness of literally anything that pops into your head. Now remember these two, because this distinction becomes absolutely crucial later on. Okay, so the monks are in the machine, the scientists are watching the monitors, the stage is set. Let's go inside the lab and see what they actually discovered when they looked into these incredibly experienced minds. And here is the plot twist. Seriously, take a look. On the left, you see the uncorrected signal. See all that red? That looks just like the old studies. It seems like gamma power is going way up. But the researchers suspected something was off. They applied a critical correction, and now look at the corrected image on the right. The result completely flips on its head. The red is gone, gamma power doesn't increase, it actually decreases. So what was this magical correction? It's something called the aperiodic slope. The best way to think about it is as the brain's background noise. Like the constant, low-level hum of a city that's just always there. It turns out a lot of previous studies hadn't properly filtered out this hum. Once these scientists did, they could finally hear the real music of the brain. And that music was telling a completely different story.
This is a huge moment in the investigation. I mean, if the story we've been told for years about gamma waves is wrong, it just opens up this massive question. Then what is the real signature of a meditating brain? What are we supposed to be looking for?
And this is where things get really fascinating. We have to stop thinking about the brain like it has a simple volume knob, just turning gamma up or down. We're about to dive into a much richer, more complex picture of how the brain actually works. So it turns out meditation isn't about making one frequency louder. It's about changing the entire texture, the richness of the brain's activity. It's about increasing what scientists call neural complexity, making the brain's patterns more dynamic, more varied, and actually less predictable. This is the perfect way to picture it. A brain with low complexity is like a simple, repetitive drum beat. It's rigid, it's predictable. But a brain with high complexity, the kind they saw in the monks, is more like a rich, improvisational jazz solo. It's dynamic, it's flexible, and it can access a way bigger range of mental states. The key here is that meditation seems to be the thing that unlocks this jazz solo mode in the brain. And this discovery connects beautifully to this really cool, cutting-edge idea in neuroscience called the entropic brain hypothesis. The theory basically says that richer states of consciousness, whether from meditation or even psychedelics, are linked to higher entropy or higher complexity in the brain. The brain isn't just getting quieter, it's playing a more intricate and varied song. Okay, so we've busted the gamma myth, and we've got a new prime suspect, complexity. But can this new theory do something the old one couldn't? Can it actually tell the difference between those two styles of meditation the monks were doing? This is the final act of our investigation. So to understand this last part, we need one more concept, and it's called criticality.
Just think of it as the brain's ultimate sweet spot for processing information. It's this perfect balance point right on the edge between total boring order and total useless chaos. The sandcastle analogy is perfect. It's stable enough to hold its shape, but it's also so responsive that the slightest touch changes it. That's the sweet spot you want your brain to be in.
And boom, this is where it all clicks into place. The scientists found that one style of meditation, Vipassana, the open monitoring one we talked about, was unique. It was the only one that consistently shifted the brain's dynamics closer to that perfect optimal state of criticality. You could see it in the brain maps. This is a huge clue, connecting the feeling of open awareness directly to a measurable optimal state of brain function.
And this wasn't just some faint signal. The evidence was so strong that when they fed all this data into a machine learning algorithm, the computer figured out that this criticality measure was one of the single most important clues for telling the two meditation states apart. A computer could literally look at the raw data and tell you if a monk was doing focused attention or open monitoring. Incredible. So let's just take a breath and zoom out. Where does this all leave us? Well, busting that old gamma myth wasn't just about correcting some little scientific detail. It's actually swinging the door wide open to a completely new way of studying consciousness itself.
All right, let's wrap up the case file. Here's the verdict from our investigation. First, forget the simple gamma story. The real action is happening in the brain's complexity and its background hum. Second, the details matter. You have to filter out that background noise to see what's really going on. Third, complexity is the new star of the show. Meditation makes the brain more flexible, more dynamic. And finally, these new tools are so powerful, they can actually tell the difference between subtle states of mind. And just how powerful are they? Well, just by looking at these new signals for complexity and criticality, the computer model could tell the difference between someone just resting and someone deep in Vipassana meditation with 73% accuracy. That is a huge deal, and it proves these new measurements are the real thing. And that leaves us with one final, massive question to chew on. This study is bigger than just meditation. It's about developing a whole new toolkit to measure the subtle fabric of consciousness itself. So if we can now quantify these incredibly deep and complex states of mind with this kind of precision, what else can we discover? What's the next frontier for understanding and maybe even enhancing the human mind?